Sleepers, Chapter 51, Sleeping Beauty. Sleeping Beauty adorned the dais, doll-like and dainty, a monument to men and madness. Preciously placed by imperfect people, unnaturally perfected. As stone rests on stone, no bosom or breath heaves, she, symbolic sufferer of our sin. Cleverly concealed and clearly seen, the public panacea, pristine and impregnable, eternal evader of capricious men, she wants and waits for no one. I found her fickle and firm. I sought the sumptuous satisfaction of kissing the sweet, sonorous Sleeping Beauty, to find freedom in flesh and wake a nation. But cold and clenched lips returned my gift. Detached and distracted, she decidedly declined. Sleeping Beauty awoke only to reject resurrection. Resting from my arms, she rests again, content with the quiet complacency sleep bequeaths. I had grown to treasure every waking minute at home, but in these last hours I slogged interminably through the mire of mortal replay. I had split with my father, wallowed in pity, and contemplated the great sleep battle to come. I had no drug to test, no puppet to cajole, and no lover to give comfort. I was stuck with my pitiful, empty self. If I could slow the mind long enough to rest or push out the invasion of remorse, I could at least escape into the beauty of lucidity. I could then dream of something better than this pain. Sleep-free, sleep-inducing drugs would remedy my restlessness, but I refused them for my personal rest. Solace would have to wait. I had expected euphoria, or even simple satisfaction in besting my father, but the victory was hollow. Revenge is a devouring enemy, not a comforting ally. Why had my father waited so long to speak to me? He could have prevented years of misplaced loyalty and bitterness. Honesty opens doors to the realm of healthy relationships and healing, but estrangement had consumed our happy ending long ago. His last-minute honesty only made the truth more bitter. My father and I would not recover from our lifelong separation. He could claim credit for strategically arranging mentors, but he could not assume their bond with me. When he made me first sleep, when he told my mother not to coddle me, despite my hatred for sleeping, when he buried me in allegories instead of love, he lost the right to return as a hero or ally or even a loved one. Perhaps he, more so than Ray, deserved my animosity. I had driven him away with boastful malice. Now I ached for succor with no way to find it. Prayer and penance were my father's solace, and I had spoiled those totems and stole his final peace. Melancholic moments in the rain had been my preferred relief, until soured by Ray's plagiarism. Jane had become my true comfort, and I discarded her to the same wolf I sought to destroy. I should have been celebrating my triumph, but my father's departure left me inconsolable. No lucidity could bring sweet dreams tonight. In my abject ponderings, one last deliberate knock shattered the silence. This could be Jane. I needed it to be Jane. With one single phone call, one act of humility, I could entice her back. But I knew she was gone from this world. Forlorn realism, bred from the empty victory against my father, crushed hope of true relief. Visitors were so rare, yet tonight unwanted visitors would not stop. I knew who it was at the door. In the 11th hour, dread struck me as my quest hung on a thread. There could be only one visitor to trump my father. I slowly opened the door, prepared for the final showdown. I had waged battles all my life and fought an indefatigable fight asleep and awake, but this last melee would end the war. He stood in the doorway, proud yet broken, his demeanor strangely difficult to read for one so normally open. A modicum of anger marked his body language, so finite, yet a torrent for this gregarious client. "Hello, Ray," I greeted casually. It was laborious to maintain pretense at such a rare visit. Pleasantries only delayed the impending conflict anticipated by both parties. "Hello, friend," replied Ray. Sarcasm soured his greeting. "Come in," I beckoned, and led him to the battlefield. After the debacles with both Jane and my father, I did not know why at this time, When I knew the end was inevitable, I continued with mock innocence. The charade seemed appropriate for my part of this rehearsed spectacle. I had lied so frequently in our exchanges that I could not change now. "Why are you here, Ray? You've only come here once or twice before. Is something the matter with Jane?" My mock ignorance was despicable. He knew the truth. Somehow, whether from my father, Jane, or corporate spies, Ray knew my secret and came for combat. Dispelling all civilities, he wasted little time with his accusation. "How could you, John? How could you fight me our whole life?" He paused long enough for my rejoinder, my last weapon after the exhaustion from my father's visit. "Et tu, Ray?" The reference was not wasted on my cultured client. He replied with uncharacteristic vitriol. "Et tu, Ray? Et tu, Ray?" he repeated, flabbergasted and angry. "I am Caesar, betrayed by his closest friend. I am the one dead on the Senate floor, ruined by intrigue and vengeance, or even worse, good intentions. You are not a victim. How could you, John? How could you spend your whole life controlling me and conspiring to bring down our company? We had everything. I gave you every chance at freedom," he choked. "And this is your repayment? Worse yet, I even tried to end the sleeper program myself. We could have been allies. Et tu, John?" I couldn't interrupt until he had finished his assault. He was a man in need of catharsis. Despite all the doors for retaliation, I wanted to know just one thing. I was beyond denying the fact. Ray clearly knew everything, or at least most everything. Arrogant but somber, I ignored his fight and asked, "Who told you?" "All that, John? And you only want to know who told me? You deny nothing?" He shook his head in shock at my behavior. "Your very question is absolute corroboration of my suspicion. Who do you think told me? Did you not recognize your own hubris? You told me, John. It was you through your dreams, one of your mental musings. I can only assume it was carelessness and not intentional. You cracked the lucid barrier to your own ruination." Clarity overwhelmed my mind. "It was the dream," I whispered introspectively, but still audible. "It was the dream, not Jane, not my father, not any of my confidants. It was I. I conquered the world and defeated myself in the same hour. Careless lucidity. I rejected my puppet master, and my puppet rejected me. And Ray would stop the drug. Everything lost for carelessness." I said nothing more. Ray's fingers tightly gripped the countertop, which had assumed the role of a wall between rival nations. Rage flushed his face at my lack of response. "Is that all you're going to say? Where's the denial? Where's the subtle manipulation? I came to fight. I came for war. You have determined and controlled my entire life. Every major decision has been yours. And if I read your accidental dream correctly, I've lost Jane as well. My greatest love and final step to real happiness is gone because of you. Give my life back, John," he yelled. "Give it all back, you ungrateful bastard." I had lost the energy to fight. This was the same inconsolable Ray I had begrudgingly nursed for years, but missing the ice cream or Shakespeare for distraction, the friend for an open ear, or a rainstorm for sympathetic loneliness. This was Ray with no vent but his enemy, and no relief but his emotion. I measured my time to reply to his plea, but his questions resumed. "Was Jane ever really mine anyway? How deep is your betrayal? Would I, Ray Huxley Matson, have even fallen naturally in love with Jane? Would we have ever met by chance? Or was it a grand trick, one more deception to confirm your power?" "It's too late to fight, Ray," I responded calmly after years of struggle. "Maybe when we were 8, maybe when we were seniors, but not now." I shrugged but kept the counter between us. "I can't reverse my actions, and you can't dissect my influence. Sorry, but we can only go forward." My calm reply irritated Ray even more. Truth had liberated my normally humble, amiable client and pushed him to unchartered anger. But it was the rage of a helpless child, madder at the betrayal and his helplessness than any specific outcome of my intrigue. He wanted justice. No one gets justice. That rhetoric isn't good enough, condemned Ray. He was growing desperate. In fact, we both looked beaten. I want more, but you offer no apology, no penance, and no escape. This last statement seemed more an implication than an argument. Escape is the one thing I can offer. I opened my arms to display my sleep ports, the passageway to peace. Perceiving that I meant relief through lucid dreaming, Ray retaliated with confused disgust. No way! That would require my drug, your drug, the drug, whatever it is. I don't want your deceptions. No more lies from you. I feared the worst for my creation, but he was breaking down, having hit the peak of anger, so I probed, desperately clinging to hope. What will you do with the drug? The SSC has already approved production and made the announcement. We were at the end of a life of battle. Patience was gone. I had to know who would be the victor. After a tenuous delay, Ray answered coolly. I sent in the approval for manufacturing tonight. Your drug goes to market in a month. Shrewd malice replaced his anger. I had never seen Ray look so majestic. What? He did it! Despite everything, he did it! I hyperventilated in relief and shock. I knew my father would never stop me, but Ray was a wild card, especially if armed with the truth. He alone could stop me, and he alone had the motive. Reading my surprise, he explained, You heard me correctly. I forwarded the approval with my final sanction to manufacturing. My father has approved, and promotions are coming for us both. You look shocked. He beamed with pride for what must have been a very deliberate action in light of my subterfuge. I was shocked and very confused. After tangible, awkward silence, I realized Ray must not really know. He thought he was ending the sleeper system. He thought, like Jane and my father, that lucidity would destroy the system. He's proud because he forgave my behavior for the greater good, to save all sleepers and clients. I didn't even have to lie. I stole a bar stool to sit down and ease the tension between standing generals, but I still needed to test him. I changed the tone to imitate camaraderie. Those promotions will mean very little when our drug collapses the entire sleeper system. The bait would flesh out his understanding. The truth had transformed Ray from timidity to regality. Further manipulation would be near impossible. I know you think I'm stupid, defied Ray, while nodding rudely. I know you think my success is part luck, part charm, and mostly inheritance. Let me dispel your misconceptions once and for all. You and I will be promoted. I've had all day to ponder your dream. I could have come running earlier. I have agonized over every detail. I know what lies you told Jane. I do know you, John, because I know myself. His finger pointed to me and then to himself. I signed the approval because I know what your drug means. I did not approve it lightly. I know what you've really done. Ray elaborated, knowing I needed explanation. We are symbiotes. Can I pluck out my eye if it offends me? Can I really cut off my right hand? How much harder than to slice out my brain, my dreams, my very substance? I couldn't live without our connection, and neither can America. Here was the truth and the substance of my vision. I stared up at him, unable to interrupt. You know why our company, our parents, pushed lowering the minimum allowed sleep age? Asked Ray rhetorically. You think it was for extended Disney hours or enhanced learning or even for a larger market? I read the research while studying substitution, the research our family doesn't want us to see. It was based on only 15 years of runtime, but it chronicled the link between addiction and age. Quote, the younger you start borrowing sleep, the more difficult it is to quit. That's what it said. If you start at age 8, you will have little desire to cut the source once an adult. In fact, it is an absolute addiction, and the detox is unbearable. Of course, the report premise could be describing any form of American indoctrination, sex, drugs, violence, even the dole. Start them early and they are hooked. Start a client child on a dedicated sleeper, and he or she will die rather than switch sleepers, or worse, return to self-sleeping. He shifted to preempt my obvious counter and rhetorically asked, Does necessity sometimes require changing a sleeper? Yes, he answered without waiting for my reply. In times of death, family moves, college, etc. But parents dampen the impact through gradual transition and continuous borrowed sleep. Like weaning a child, they smooth the sleeper handover. Anything is better than severing cold turkey. I followed his logic on addiction, but he had proposed the impossible in our youth. I had to understand why. But you offered me my freedom, I hesitated. If Ray had intended integrity years ago to back his emancipatory offer, then he had risked his own misery. Yes, but I knew you would never accept, he sneered. Besides, I did believe in your liberty, even if it would have killed me. Even if clients rarely admit it, we all know it is torture to change. But I was a scatterbrained idealist willing to sacrifice my happiness for your independence. That kindness seems misplaced now, given you are ever so willing to sacrifice my happiness. But I was naive. Ray's implied rebuke had little impact on my poisoned heart, and he continued without further comment. Even if sleeper dreams are only blurry fragments, they become us. They are our fragments. Switch sleepers after years of repetition, and the sleep is jolting and unnatural. I hate your vacations and absences. Your return makes me whole. I need your dream seeds, and I am not alone. Client America would choose the risk of mind control over losing their sleepers. In fact, I bet they would embrace the change from muddled dreams to brilliant lucidity. I silently stared and contemplated. I had read these words on Ray's mind and seen them in the face of countless sleepers on the street. But today he verbalized the truth. Ray misinterpreted my thoughtful silence. You're shocked because you thought I wouldn't understand your plan. And if I understood, you thought I would shut you down. Or did you think me weak and addicted? You foresaw my surrender? Well, you should know me. We are two parts of a whole. You take out your revenge on me, and you hurt yourself. You set me free, and you free yourself. John, you chose our mutual destruction. And for what? Because I forced you to sleep for me? No, I cried, lowering my head. Because I chose to sleep for you. I am as guilty as you are in my misery. The same goes for all of America. Both sides chose this hell and did so willingly. I was even offered freedom, and I rejected it, from you and my parents. I sighed, beaten at last. Exhaustion and honesty at last deflated Ray's truculence. His face mirrored my own in fighting my father. Yes, I understand, he replied, nodding slowly, grief in his eyes. With the tension now dissipating, he settled down onto the stool opposite me. We had both cast off our masters and felt empty. Here sat Grant and Lee at Appomattox, broken, not triumphant, solemn and respectful, kings of a wasted country. There is no victory in real war. There is only an end and a beginning, and neither is exactly clear. We had been dragged through a war and forgot the reason we ever fought. We were old war buddies, the fight over, the new war about to begin. The desolation had razed our childhood and poisoned our adulthood. We were not innocent, but we believed. Crushed by our mutual honesty, Ray breathed deep in slow anguish. Then in desperate pity, tears forming in his eyes, he pleaded, "Can you help me escape? Can you dream us something pleasant tonight?" His voice broke on the emptiness. Recovering from the same fatal honesty, I was slow to answer, but his question gave me strength. Yes, Ray, I can dream us something wonderful today, tomorrow, and always. Lucid nirvana marked my next sleep for Ray. Unencumbered by lies and revenge, I lived all my happy moments, those that were and those that would never be. If Peter Pan were real, I could have flown all the lost boys to Neverland and back with a pinch of pixie dust. I dreamed of the stunning Samantha and imagined life with her. I expunged the vindictive and pictured only her perfection, her wholeness. Next, I embraced Jane and, wiping away all wrongs, reinvented life as it should have been. We lived away from the city in a quiet suburb, a bucolic retreat for neither sleepers nor clients, just people. There was no sleep-free. There was no memory of that whore. I taught history or art, or maybe even art history. She taught children, poor children, with dreams, real dreams, not the nightmare of impending sleep servitude. And their parents thanked Jane for her dedication and nobility. We were happy. We were free. Such was the soma of sleep, the sleep sleepers were meant to feel, the drug of imagination, infinity, and memory. I could live my dream and sleep my life, sleep happy. Cumulus gave all, storm, shade, and beauty. Performing his daily download after I finished, Ray lived as I. Having perfected my lucid skills, Ray dreamed as I, assuming my reality through transference. Every touch, every sound, every happy moment became his. Through transcendent sleep, we lived the world we, a whole creature, deserved, made possible with sleep-free and Cumulus in perfect union. We dreamed, and by dreaming we lived. We found our peace, a peace we gifted to America and the whole world, and it was beautiful. Epilogue, Dreamland.
Jane knew changes were coming. A student had just confided that she was now having the most lucid dreams and could control them. She was the third student in the last 2 months. Rumors were rampant at her sleeper school. The rise of lucidity was dawning. The SSC had accelerated testing for all sleeper children, regardless of the 5-year test cycle. They were scared. Jane's class would be tested sometime in the next month. By then, she expected even more lucid dreamers. John's pandemic had arrived. Perhaps it was time to return to John and Ray. She hadn't loved or been loved in 3 years. No one could replace the perfect relationship, even if it was a strange triangle directed by an even stranger father. But with Ray and John, she had the perfect man. Jane could find no indication in the news that Ray had again fallen in love. The same surely applied to John. Perhaps she would return to them. Perhaps she could share in the joy that the sleeper system had to fall. How could it not? John's vision of ending sleep-free was surely in the making. Her students would be free, and he could give up his vendetta. Jane sat lazily daydreaming about her role in the world's demise and popped a sleeper pill. Oh, she abhorred having a sleeper, but Jane craved John's lucid dreams. Now she could have her own. She had learned enough sleep science from John. She knew the safe dosage of sleep meds and had been taking the pill at high dosage rates for the last year. In fact, she'd stockpiled enough of the drug that if the company went belly up, she'd be lucid dreaming to her death. Project Cumulus truly was as much her glory as John's. She had asked him once, when John first recruited her, how he chose the name. He didn't skip a beat. Simply said he wanted people to look up again and see the beauty above. Now she knew another meaning. The lucid dreams had started, beginning with fantastic flights through puffy cumulus. Oh, how wonderful it was to share in this perfect dream. Senator Esperanza finished reading the last report. Bottom line, sleepers everywhere were dreaming lucidly. It was not just a rumor. Too much data, and it was happening in children and adults, which meant lucidity wasn't an evolution. Something had changed. No way that young man from Sleep Free knew the reason. Whether it was the sleep drug concoction, the hardware, or the software upgrade, Lucy Esperanza was going to find out. She'd test on herself if needed. Easier to hide the truth if you knew the truth. Then she'd make sure that change, like her position as the SSC chair, was absolutely permanent.
Thank you for listening to The Sleepers by David Greaves, read by David and Jane Greaves. Hope you've enjoyed listening and had a fun time thinking about the dystopian world of borrowed sleep. If you've enjoyed listening, I'd ask that you do 2 things. First, go to Amazon to the link that I'll provide in these comments and provide a review of the book and help share that with others. And second of all, share this podcast with other people through your social media and point them to our various websites for Sleep Free Inc., whether that's on YouTube or Spotify, iTunes, Amazon, or my website, sleepfreeinc.com, so that others can listen and help me share the book that I've written. Thanks again. Bye.